Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Coming up tonight on Our News, a Grand Bahama woman dies in a car crash. How education officials are helping students make up for time lost during the pandemic. Food assistance increased amid growing demand. And find out the quote of the week. Welcome to Our News, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs, topping news tonight. A 22-year-old woman is dead after crashing her silver Honda Accord into a median on the Warren J. Lavardi Highway on Saturday night. Assistant Superintendent of Police Alfonso Pinder told media that police were alerted to the accident at around 9:30 p.m.
The lone victim, who's a female, was traveling west along Warren J. Lavardi Highway when she apparently lost control of the vehicle, ran across the median, off onto the northern side of the road and collided into a utility pole. And as a result, we found later that she had succumbed to injuries received.
Relatives on scene told Our News the victim is a 22-year-old woman. Pinder spoke about a contributing factor to the crash.
Certainly we believe that speed was a factor in this accident. We do not know whether or not she was strapped or using the seatbelt, but we know certainly that speed was a factor.
Video of the horrific accident shows a mangled silver vehicle with extensive damage to its roof. As a tow truck driver attempts to tow the vehicle away, a pink bag with the woman's possessions falls from the vehicle and is handed over to family members looking on. Pinder says the fire department had to be called in to help.
Because of the nature of the damage caused, we had to use the jaws of life. We had to call the fire department in to render assistance in order to free the victim from the car, from the wreckage.
Officers had this plea for motorists.
We want to urge members of the public, we know that this is the Yuletide season. We want to urge you please to drive with extreme caution and care. As we know, we are out of the curfew, and it means that there are much more vehicles on the street. We want to urge you please to drive with extreme caution and extreme care.
With officials hammering home the fact that thousands of students are losing out on a proper education thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic's devastating impact. Minister of State for Education ZANE LIGHTBOURNE says several international educational catch-up models are being studied by the ministry.
And we're looking at the UNESCO model on catch-up to also guide us through this. We have a number of different models that we are consulting regionally and globally in terms of helping our students catch up with work that they would have missed, and also focusing on those core subjects that would help them to be able to function in today's, in the 21st century Bahamas, in the 21st century world. We want to look at the fastest way to get our children on track, not necessarily giving them too much of what we would have done before, where it's heavy to consume. So we're definitely going to focus on the most critical areas first.
According to a UNESCO report released in September, 117 million students around the world are still out of school. The report also stated that since the onset of the pandemic, schools across the world were completely closed for an average of 18 weeks. Prolonged and repeated school closures during the past 2 academic years have resulted in learning losses and increased dropout rates, impacting the most vulnerable students disproportionately. Locally, education officials have said about 50% of public school students use the ministry's virtual platform. Education Minister Glenys Hanna-Martin has revealed public schools will resume hybrid learning in January. LIGHTBOURNE says a strong focus will be placed on key subjects as officials work to get students caught up as quickly as possible.
They're usually able to handle the rest of them once they could get a grip on literacy and numeracy. We're also heavily focusing on our technical and vocational programs. I've spoken a lot about it, and the contributions, the 2 contributions I've done in the House, because we want to focus on PTVI being a model, if not just nationally, regionally, in terms of something similar to MIT offering technical subjects, but not making it where technical just for persons who are not academically inclined.
More than 4 years after Hurricane Irma flattened Ragged Island, work to restore basic infrastructure is still ongoing and many residents are still picking up the pieces. Jasmine Brown caught up with a resident she first interviewed just days after the storm.
51 months after her family's home of 35 years was reduced to rubble, Minister Marjorie Wallace and her husband are still struggling to rebuild in Duncantown, Ragged Island. I first met Marjorie on September 12, 2017, when our news team accompanied then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis and a delegation of government officials, days after Category 5 Hurricane Irma slammed into the island with 155 miles per hour winds. This was Minister Wallace in 2017, moments after she returned to the island on a $1,200 chartered flight.
We don't have anywhere now to stay. It's completely gone. I have to. As soon as we could get a flight out at a reasonable price.
However, Wallace and her family refused to abandon Ragged Island. While the debris of what was once her home of 3.5 decades has been cleared, rubble remains in the now mostly vacant lot. Wallace says that's because they have not been able to rebuild and have had to turn her mother-in-law's bar into a makeshift home.
Since Hurricane Irma, the house that I lived in was completely gone. So me and my husband, we're still struggling to, get somewhere to live that is comfortable.
So where do you live? Where do you and your husband live now?
Well, he had a bar, his mother had a bar, and we had to, part off sections just to make a room for us to have somewhere to sleep.
Wallace says the major challenge has been finances. After losing all of their earthly possessions during Irma, she says the pandemic has also placed a strain on their pockets.
Well, we're trying to get some material now, but because of the pandemic, finance and the fishing business has gone down terribly. Because since Irma, the fishermen here, they all had problems with their fishing boat and what have you. So they all are just struggling to get back to where they were.
Though she and her family have a lot more work to do and their circumstances are less than ideal, Wallace says Ragged Island is the only place her family calls home.
Ragged Island is a no-crime base. We can leave our doors or windows open. You could leave your bag or whatever and take a ride to Nassau, and where you leave your stuff, you need it right there. But why I like Ragged Island is because it's peaceful and it's quiet.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Thousands of Bahamians who benefit from the food assistance program from the Ministry of Social Services have received an increase in funds, according to State Minister Lisa Raming.
Say a little over $100.
So a little over $100 more than what was originally being given?
No, what usually used to be given is sometimes 50, 75, 80. It's depending on the family and who's a part of the family. And so we have capped it somewhat a little over $100 across the board. And we've seen that families they're happy and they're contented with what we're doing now, temporary, until the full slate has been rolled out.
Back in October, Social Services Minister Obi Wilchcombe said Social Services inherited around 4,000 people from the recently dismantled food distribution program. The National Food Distribution Task Force was established in 2020 during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. Roughly $54 million was invested in the program. Raming said in recent weeks they've seen a significant uptick in residents seeking assistance.
We have found an increase. There's a lot of persons. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people are unemployed. So I know from the statistics that we have gotten when we first came in, and all the reports we're getting from the social workers at the different centers, they're indicating that there is a high volume of persons who are asking for assistance.
Raming explained that the ministry has rearranged resources to meet the increased demand.
We're doing the best at what we can, so we're moving funds that were allocated for this to move it here and that. So it's shuffling to make sure that people eat, especially during this holiday time.
So to come on our news, a survivor of domestic abuse speaks out. And meet the young barber who refuses to take shortcuts on the road to success. That's coming up when our news returns.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
After enduring years of abuse, one woman is sharing her story of triumph and encouraging those who may find themselves in similar situations to speak out. Bethany McDermott reports.
Across the world, the COVID-19 pandemic caused an escalation of violence against women and girls. Here in the Bahamas, officials say they have seen a slight increase in domestic violence reports. But one survivor, who says she struggled through a cycle of abuse for years, wants others to know that there is a way out.
In 2013, I met death. I dated death. I smiled with death. I was intimate with death. And I almost married death.
Tina Foster Gay is a mother of 4. After enduring years of abuse at the hands of her significant other, she says she managed to escape after the safety of her son was threatened.
I filed for bound over 9 times and took it away. I went to the courts and turned back. When he cried, I took him back. But when my eyes opened was when I was dragged with his car. And my 12-year-old son came and swung at him, and he swung back. When your children get involved, time is up.
Gay shared her story during a Human Rights Day news conference on Friday on the final day of ZANE's 16 Days of Activism campaign, which focuses on ending violence against women and girls.
Women and girls out there, choose to live and not die. The first step to overcome is you. You have to make the choice to get out. You have to trust God. You have to try to get counseling. Seek help from your church. Seek help from persons such as Sewell, Zonta, Crisis Center. File that restraining order and make it stick.
She's now a registered nurse with a master's degree and is working to get her PhD. Gay says she hopes her story will help others in a similar situation.
I can stand here today as a survivor and to tell any woman out there that is being abused or hurt that you can survive. You are a survivor, you will make it, and you shall live and not die.
Wife of the Prime Minister, Anne-Marie Davis, applauded Gay for her bravery and called on other survivors to get out of violent relationships. Reporting for Our News, I'm Bethany McDermott.
When Our News comes back from the break, meet the young entrepreneur shaving his way to success. Stay with us.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
A young barber who was determined to be his own boss is working hard to make a name for himself in the competitive business. And he isn't taking any shortcuts. Cal Joaquin has a story.
My goal right now is to be the next Bill Gates in a sense of the Bahamas. That's my goal. And then also from there impact lives throughout the country.
At the age of 21, Derek Young is full on into entrepreneurship. The young barber says since high school he knew that he wanted to be his own boss and worked to make it a reality.
I went to Aquinas at the time and I took up cosmetology. I fell in love with it. I even stole one of the cosmetology books.
You stole it from the school?
Yeah, I stole it from the school. Read it back and front because I just was addicted with the process and I just fell in love with it like on a whole different level.
After that, he began cutting his own hair and the hair of family and friends as a way to learn. Then in late 2019, at the age of 19, he took the leap, but only to run into a bit of a snag at the start of the pandemic.
So when I got into it, I realized there was a hole in the market whereby there wasn't much appointments going on before the pandemic. And seeing that we're in a pandemic now, it made it easier to have an appointment, sanitation, and all of those different factors just equated to me finding the gap in the market.
With shop now set up at Pro Cuts, he's the owner of his own products, Bahama Wave and 360 Drip Hair and Grooming products. For him, entrepreneurship is the only way.
You don't want to go into a store and having to buy off the shelf. It's going to cost more money. And me as a barber, I'm that actual link to my customers. I'm the one cutting my customers' hair. I'm the one giving them recommendations on products. So if I'm the one supplying the product, they believe in my product, and for that they'll be more comfortable with it.
And while he's just getting started with making a name for himself in the industry, the 21-year-old says he hopes to one day grow into one of the biggest business owners in the region.
For anyone who's trying to pursue entrepreneurship, I recommend that you read a lot, gain as much information on it, find someone that inspires you, and from there take steps daily. Don't take it by, oh, I could do it this month, I could do it next month. Daily, step by step, you'll get there eventually. Believe the process, it's gonna be tough, harder than anything you could imagine, but trust me, you can get it done.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Still ahead, we count down the most memorable quotes of the week, so stay tuned.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
It's time now for a look back on the most memorable moments of the week. At number 3, former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Peter Turnquest urging government to delay its planned VAT reduction to 10%.
How does those numbers work? It doesn't make sense. And so again, I think that they're taking a bit of a risk, a gamble with the fiscal stability of the country. I think they would have been prudent to wait a couple of months. There's no rush right now.
At number 2, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism and Investments Chester Cooper announced the end of the travel health visa for Bahamians returning home.
PLP promised to end the travel health visa for Bahamians and residents that was implemented by the previous administration, and we are doing just that.
And your quote of the week comes from Joe Alberts. He's the manager of the Holiday Carnival. Just minutes after an announcement from OPM Press Secretary Clint Watson that the Holiday Carnival's application to operate was denied by health officials, Alberts told reporters that health officials never visited the carnival site and they were still working on getting that approval.
We invited them to come out and look at it and see how they like how safe it is. So maybe they will reconsider, but they won't come yet. No one ever came to look at it yet.
They're saying the carnival never responded to Ministry of Health concerns.
Thank you for joining us for Our News Tonight. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Jared Hayes. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.